All right, hey guys, here we are, hole number 5. Interesting win there. It really makes me question. I'll probably do one guide that's more of the layup shot here, but we also will do the aggressive approach. I do believe going up there for a win like this could be advantageous. It would be ideal to do it over to the right-hand side, but it's a little bit tougher to do so. When you try to go aggressive over to the right, it's a little bit harder of a target to hit. It's very safe to put it over here. However, it is going to leave you a crosswind. And one of the things that you can try to do typically is maybe some kind of rough bump with topspin off a long iron. Alternatively, you'd probably want to try to get it up here into short iron territory. But what I'm going to do with this club, especially since they're more basic clubs, is you're going to see that I'm just going to right around 4 topspin or so. Somewhere right in here. I'm thinking almost 10 rings. And substantial curl, making sure that I'm not adding any extra power on my curl. What this is going to do is it's typically going to get it over here into this nice little curved funnel area. Again, as I mentioned, make sure you're not doing anything to add any additional power. You don't want to roll through into that rough. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you could make. But as I mentioned, some kind of topspin bump is what I recommend. I believe it's typically about 5 bars. It looks like we can see most of it on my opponent. I think you can get away with as low as 5. You can also start to cheat it up a little bit more, so it is enough. I can't tell if, he needs all 6 of this. He may just have kind of like a longer ball guide. This is a very good method for trying to get this hole out. And it's something that you'd want to just start to try to get dialed in, because your drives may not always be the same distance to the hole. So you'll just want to pay attention. And as you can see, it is coming in just a little bit fast. You can see we're coming in almost 4 grids too far. So as I mentioned, he can't see all of his ball guide. It only gives him like 4.0. So most guys end up pushing that a little bit too far, especially in a tailwind scenario. You're not really going to need that ball guide to be fully to the hole in a tailwind situation. So what I'm going to typically do with tailwind, maybe about 1.5 on the backspin. You can see that I'm going to start into the hole, kind of like this. You can see that I was kind of towards mid-club a little bit. Now, let me just show you. This is right where my +0 yardage is. So I can use that as kind of a guideline. I can start to kind of memorize that, and I can figure out where that spot is, and then I can use this as a reference point. So what I'm going to do here, I'm thinking about 7.7 rings. And let's just see how this plays out. That's about 7 points. Well, what did I say I was? 7 point. It's a little bit light. So I went about 7.7 rings, and it probably needed 8.0. Would have been probably about perfect. So I was probably about 0.3 light. And I can use that as kind of a starting reference point. My wind was what? I forget what it was, maybe 8.9, but you could replay it. And what you can do is you could say, okay, this is the point where he had the +1 on his screen. So it gives you a distance. And you can see how far I am from that on my initial setup. And where I'm trying to land. So one of the things that you can do is, if you get your tee shot a little bit longer next time, and that +1 yardage is moved up even farther, you'll know, okay, the ball's going to be in the air shorter, so I'm going to have to go less win per ring than Zach just did, or whatever. Mine is essentially a -10% off the max number. If for instance, it was 8.9, which I believe the wind was, it's essentially 10% less than that is 8.0 rings. And 8.0 rings would have been almost perfect there. So with that in mind, if you drive it farther than I just did, and the +1 doesn't correlate to the same spot, you can use that as a frame of reference to say, okay, I'll have to go either more or less than that based on that result. Another thing, if you drive it a little bit shorter than I do, which means that +1 is going to start to pick up quicker. It's going to be closer to the fairway, okay, where that +1 is. That means that the ball's going to need to carry farther in order to get to that same landing spot, which means that I'm going to need to go more rings than that. So let's say the scenario was the same, 8.9, and I went 8.0. In that scenario, maybe you need to go 8.2 rings, okay? Because of the fact that your distance is farther, and the ball's going to be in the air more, and there's going to be more wind effect. Maybe it's even 8.3 rings. These are the things that you want to start thinking about for when you have to play your same shots, is getting to those same distances and then just focusing on, shot replication, but also shot altering based on how much farther you are on a consistent basis, because you're not always going to get it to the same tee shots every time. Another thing that can be a little bit misleading is if you just try to use your driving distance. Okay, you're never going to know, am I on the same angle each and every time? So you can't really use that method too well, because you're never going to know that it correlates straight to the left of the fairway versus the center of the fairway versus the right center of the fairway versus the right edge of the fairway. They're all going to have kind of different perspective and angles towards the fairway. So it's going to really probably have different second shot distances. So you can't really use that yardage thing too effectively. You can, but only to a point. It's much better to use what I'm kind of suggesting here, which is essentially looking at that, where that +1 yardage falls. Okay, because that's going to be the closest to where, you can figure out, am I farther or am I shorter than last time I was here? And you can use that to your advantage, because it'll change the amount of rings that you need to go, or percentage based. Because you can see that, I said my adjustment was essentially max minus 10%. But it doesn't mean yours is going to be that. But if you get to that same distance that I did, also keep in mind that I have a sniper 8. My sniper 8 isn't going to correlate to your sniper 10. So you also need to factor that in. So I'm missing, 5-6 yards? I'm missing 6 yards on I think I'm missing 4 yards on a 9, 6 yards on, so that's going to change. That +1 number is going to change for you. So you'll have to make sure that you keep that in mind if you're going to use this method as well. Whatever your club is, it's going to be a little bit different. But you can set up your own strategy of what it is that I'm setting based on your clubs. You can start today just trying to get that frame of reference for yourself, and then hone in on that as the week progresses. So hopefully those tips help you. Good luck with that hole, and I'll see you guys on the next one.